Part 6. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 51. I don't know how long it took, but the car slowly stopped. "We're here," Mercury's voice came from the tower. Garen slowly opened his eyes and looked out the window of the car. On the simple and beautiful hillside, the double-story buildings of Konu town were looming and sparsely dotted. A grey bullock cart passed by the car. The driver of the bullock cart was a little boy. He looked curiously at the black car he was riding in. "Are we here?" Garen stretched his waist. "Yes, it's a few hours' drive. This is the town of Kenu. We have to walk along mountain road to get to Yinsha Castle, but you can't drive on the road behind Talai." Mercury got out of the car and looked up at the sky. "The weather isn't very good either. It seems we have to get to Yinsha Castle as soon as possible." Garen opened the door and got out of the car, looking up at the sky. The sky was full of gloomy grey clouds, the wind was a bit strong, and there was a slight dampness. It's obviously noon, but the sky is still so dark. It seems like it's going to rain heavily today. "Then let's get there before it rains." Bai Ying changed seats and sat in the driver's seat. "I'll register the car. You go find the carriage." "No problem." The three of them worked together and quickly found a carriage driver who was willing to go to Yinsha Castle now at double the fare. They got on the carriage and hit the road again. After another 2 hours' drive, the three of them finally arrived at the hillside they had visited before. Standing on the dark green lawn slope, overlooking the Yinsha Castle in the distance. The castle is still surrounded by ashes. It and the surrounding soil are the color of gray-white ash after burning. It is also mixed with black carbon black ingredients. It looks like coffee powder mixed with milk powder. The three-pointed castle was silent, eerily quiet. The only sound in the surrounding sky and woods was the rustle of the wind. Rumble. Rolling thunder came from the gloomy sky, from far to near, and then passed from the top of the three people's heads to farther behind. "Wow! This is Yinsha Castle? The atmosphere is quite good." Bai Ying chuckled, not serious at all, but his eyes were secretly scanning the surrounding terrain. "We have been living here for the past few days. Originally, 2 people from the police station stayed here, but I informed them that they evacuated yesterday. The scene where I sold you has almost not changed. It is exactly the same as when Saiwaka was injured." Talai Mercury said with a solemn expression, "Let's go, it's going to rain heavily." He took the lead and walked down the slope, followed closely by Bai Ying. Garen took a careful look at a second-floor window on the left side of the castle, where he was pushed down. Then followed closely. The three of them walked on the dark green hillside, like 3 little ants crawling on the green carpet, extremely small. There were no other people in the vast expanses of grass and woods around them. Only 3 people were slowly approaching the Yinsha Castle in the center. Click. Blue lightning flashed across the sky, and a thunder exploded. The 3 of them speeded up and walked into the castle fence, and soon arrived in front of the gate. Mercury in the tower took out the key and opened the door. Bai Ying looked around at the surrounding environment and frowned slightly. Garen, on the other hand, looked at the castle in front of him, with a faint shadow in his heart. Last time he was inexplicably pushed down to the second floor. When he finally looked back, he couldn't see anyone, and he still heard the laughter. Now we come to this old castle again. The entire Yinsha Castle has therefore been shrouded in mystery. If you can, it's best to go to the last room and have a look. Garen had never been afraid of fear in his previous life, although now his skin was slightly covered in goosebumps and his scalp was numb. But instead it made him even more excited. The more I feel fear, the more I expose my inner weakness. Isn't this world much more interesting than the previous life, he thought silently in his heart. Squeak. The door is open. The 3 of them filed into the door, and then the Mercury in the tower slowly closed. The hall was dark, and Mercury in the tower removed a torch from the wall, lit it, and held it in his hand as a lighting tool. Separately or together? Together, it will be troublesome to disperse the people who encounter the golden ring. Bai Ying frowned. Indeed, Garen agreed. Then let's go and see the scene first, the room where Saiwaka found the metal Tailai Mercury suggested. Neither Garen nor Bai Ying had any objections, and the three of them walked up the curved stairs to the second floor. The crisp footsteps echoed throughout the castle, empty and permeable. Soon, the three of them returned to the room where Garen was pushed. With a click, the door was opened. A layer of white ash fell immediately above the doorframe. It seems Kelly didn't live in this room last time. I thought you lived here. Tailai Mercury smiled. Why is there so much dust? He didn't go in, but squatted at the door and looked inside. The room was full of dilapidated scenes. The ground was covered with thick white dust. There was a big bed, a box, a stool, and nothing else. In the dust on the ground in the middle, there is only a line of footprints, which looks relatively light. These are Saiwaka's footprints. It seems that he found the metal on the bed or on the box, then walked directly to the window for some reason and jumped out. Tailai Mercury said solemnly. I haven't let anyone touch the scene here at all. Bai Ying nodded and followed to check the furnishings in the entire room. Only Garen, when he opened the door, he felt his scalp numb and goosebumps all over his body. He clearly remembered that he had entered this room at that time, and even the furnishings were exactly the same. But now, it's only been a month or two since he last came here, and it's impossible for so much dust to accumulate. The point is, the big bed in the room is obviously where Tailai Mercury came to live. The bed is definitely a new bed, a very clean new bed. But now, the big bed looks like it hasn't been used for many years. The bed is yellow and full of dust and cobwebs. Tailai, didn't you stay in this room when you came here with me last time? He squatted down and his voice was dry. How is that possible? Mercury in the tower glanced at Garen in confusion. Only Saiwaka has been in this room. The ash on the ground will take at least many years to accumulate. Garen recalled the scene when he came in last time, and an uncontrollable strange feeling suddenly surged into his heart. So, which room was the room I entered last time? He was a little confused. Could it be that the tower deliberately spread ashes to disguise it? He carefully inspected the situation inside the room. Stand at the door and look in. Everything inside was the same as the last time he saw it, except that it looked dusty and worn out. What now? He asked in a low voice. But he didn't tell me what happened last time. Let's clean up. We'll stay in the two rooms next door. I want to see what's weird about this Yinsha castle. Tailai Mercury said without fear. How to allocate it? Bai Ying glanced at Garen. How about the three of us share a room and just move a bed? Otherwise, I can't guarantee the safety of both of you. Garen was silent for a moment, then waved his hand and said, I don't need it. I'll sleep in a room by myself. You two sleep together. It's convenient for you, Bai Ying, to protect the tower. Don't forget that I'm not an ordinary person without the ability to resist. He showed a smile. That's fine, this time I want to see the truth about the bad luck of the doomed antique. Tailai Mercury nodded. Click. Another bolt of lightning flashed, making the faces of the three people pale, and the rumble of thunder continued. Pa! Pa pa pa! Big drops of rain hit the windows of the castle, and soon turned into a dense and large knocking sound, which was continuous and crisp. Who? Tailai Mercury's eyes suddenly froze, and he suddenly pulled out his pistol and pointed it at Galen's back. The two stood facing each other, with Mercury's pistol in the tower pointed at Garen's back in the corridor far away. Bai Ying frowned. He didn't feel anyone behind him. He was facing the tower like Garen. He looked back behind him and wondered. What's wrong? I didn't feel anyone behind me. Garen also looked back at the corridor, but it was empty. No, I saw a dark shadow flashing past the end of the corridor. He was obviously spying on us just now, Tailai said sternly, If it weren't for the metal wall lamp on the right side of the corridor, I wouldn't have been able to spot that person's shadow. So you saw someone moving from the reflection of that wall lamp. Bai Ying thoughtfully looked at the wall lamp pointed in the tower. It was a brass wall lamp. The strange thing was that the brass base was still shiny and had no patina. Yes. Let's stay in the same room, it's safer, Talai whispered. I have no objection, Garen nodded, looking at the bronze cross medal around Talai's neck. A trace of solemnity flashed in his eyes. Maybe the people from Jinhuan think we need to be a little more vigilant and see what tricks they are playing, Bai Ying said coldly. The three of them moved 2 single beds and stuffed them into a room next door. Then they cleaned a little, and they were able to sleep with their clothes shared. Garen knew that neither Talai Mercury nor Bai Ying believed in the antiques of misfortune. After all, as long as they had the information, everything he said before could actually be disguised. Instead, they believe that these so-called antiques of bad luck are probably man-made disasters. But he didn't know for sure, this Yinsha castle was indeed a little weird. This time it's not me who carries the bronze cross, but Talai. From another angle, I want to see what happens to the owner who carries the medal. Garen kept secretly paying attention to Talai's Mercury while moving the bed. Boom. A muffled sound suddenly came from outside the room, as if the wind was blowing the window and hitting the window lattice. The three of them were sitting on the bed and stools respectively. Neither of them made a sound, just quietly listening to what was going on outside. The sound of rain became louder and louder, as if you were pouring water down with a gourd. The whining sound of the wind came from other parts of the castle, like a ghost's cry. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 52. Bai Ying held the pistol and stood up slowly, leaning his back against the wall. He glanced at the other two people. The two men understood immediately, stood up, took out the pistols from their waists, and turned on the safety. Click. Another bolt of thunder and lightning flashed across, illuminating the room brightly. Bai Ying put his ear against the wall, seeming to be listening to something. There's someone out there, he whispered. More than one person. His ears left the wall, and large pieces of white dust suddenly fell on the wall, making a swishing sound. Who is that person? Bai Ying roared and rolled violently. 2 bullet holes appeared on the wall where he was originally standing. It turned out that someone was shooting from the next wall with a gun. Bai Ying stood up and rushed to the door, opened it suddenly and rushed out. Garen and Talai Mercury stayed in the room vigilantly and did not move. Galen held the pistol in his hand, leaning against the window and staring at the door warily. Suddenly he felt his back collar being pulled. Looking back, the window was opened at some point. There was no one outside, and the pouring raindrops kept falling, making it almost impossible to see the scenery a few meters away. What's wrong, Kelly? It seems like someone is pulling on my collar, Garen wondered, but maybe I was too nervous and the collar got caught. Talai leaned over and looked out the window. This is the 2nd floor. It's very high from the ground. It should be caught. Be careful and don't stand at the window. It's still dangerous even if you can't see anything clearly in this weather. I know, Garen nodded. Boom. Suddenly there was a gunshot from next door. Let's go. Talai was the first to rush out, followed closely by Garen. The two quickly came to the next room, which was the room where Garen was pushed down before. The room was empty. White Eagle, Talai shouted loudly. No one responded. Only the door behind me creaked. He turned around and found that Kelly, who had been following him, was gone. Kelly, he yelled, slowly clenching the pistol in his hand and looking nervous. White Eagle. Kelly. Are you there? The half-opened door was suddenly blown by the wind, and slowly opened completely. Squeak. The sound was extremely harsh in the quiet corridor with only the sound of rain. It was dark outside the door and nothing could be seen. Talai felt that his hand holding the gun was shaking a little, and suddenly he realized something was wrong. His eyes quickly darted around the room. The whole room seemed unusually tidy. The cobwebs on the big bed were gone and replaced with a pure white bed. The floor was also made of polygonal red bricks, without any dust. The big box at the end of the bed has also become extremely tidy, with no dust at all. There is indeed something strange here. The expression in the tower darkened, and he slowly opened the safety of the pistol. Boom! Garen followed behind and saw Talai rushing into the next room with a gun. The door automatically bounced back due to the wind. He also opened the door and rushed in. Huh! Something strange happened. The detective in the tower, who was just one step ahead of him, could not see anyone at all. Talai, Garen slowly opened the safety on his pistol and walked into the room. The room was full of dust, and a large area of the floor outside the window was wet. A person was standing in front of the window with his back to him. Garen looked carefully and saw that the man's clothes were vaguely similar to those of Bai Ying. Talai, he asked in a low voice. Ta-ta-ta. Suddenly there were sounds of footsteps behind him. Garen turned around and saw Bai Ying running into the room. Where's the tower? Bai Ying asked breathlessly. There was someone next door just now, and I didn't catch up with him and lost him. Isn't the tower by the window? Garen turned back and pointed to the window, and was shocked to find that there was no one in the window. The person who had his back turned to him just now suddenly disappeared. What's going on? Just now I saw a man standing at the window with his back to me, he said in a deep voice. Did you see it wrong? Bai Ying frowned and walked over, squatting on the ground outside the window to check. There are no footprints here. There was no way anyone could have been standing here just now. Impossible, Garen said firmly. I clearly saw someone standing at the window, right? Where is the tower? Isn't he with you? Bai Ying was stunned. I followed him into this room just now, and then he disappeared. My line of sight was blocked by the door. In less than 2 seconds, I couldn't see him when I came in, Garen said solemnly. Click. A flash of lightning flashed, making the two of them look pale and bright. I'm sorry. Bai Ying's face became solemn, and he took out a match and lit a small torch he carried with him. The bright yellow light slowly ignited, immediately illuminating a small area of the room. Galen suddenly thought of something, his expression changed, he rushed to the window and looked down. There was nothing on the black lawn below, and he took a long breath. Talai obviously came one step ahead of me. Are you sure? Bai Ying looked calm and looked at Garen with a sharp look. In such a short period of time, there is no way he could come in and have no one there. I'm sure, Garen replied affirmatively. Bai Ying stared at him closely, slowly clenching the pistol in his hand. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something, and slowly retreated facing Garen. He retreated to the door of the room and squatted down, using his free hand on the ground. Touched it gently. Suddenly, his body slowly relaxed. You're right. There are indeed 3 people's footprints here. But the footprints of one of them disappeared just as he entered the room. Garen was also feeling a little scared at this time. He walked over a few steps and squatted down to check. There were indeed 3 pairs of footprints on the ground. One pair disappeared after entering the room. The other 2 pairs were still visible in the room because of the heavy humidity. Visible. Bang. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew out of the window of the room, slamming the door shut and almost hitting Garen's nose. The wind is too strong. Bai Ying stood up. I'm sorry I blamed you wrongly, he apologized, stretched out his hand and pushed the door, but did not push it open. It's okay. The door is automatically locked. Just take the key and open it, Garen reminded. His face was solemn and he was always alert to all the movements around him. We must find Talai quickly, he may be in danger now. I'll do it, Bai Ying nodded, with a gloomy look on his face. He took out a bunch of keys, looked at the numbers on them, picked one out and inserted it into the keyhole of the door. Blah blah blah. The key turned in the lock a few times, but the door did not move. Bai Ying pushed it again, but it couldn't be pushed open at all. Huh, Bai Ying was stunned for a moment. Something's wrong. Bump it away. Garen also saw that something was wrong. Bai Ying nodded, took a step back, and kicked his foot violently. Boom. The door didn't move at all, but a lot of white dust fell around it. There's something weird in this room. Garen took a step back to make some distance. You go back and get your things. I'll open the door first. Once we find the tower, we'll leave. Bai Ying also felt something was wrong and said loudly. Good. Garen quickly rushed back to the room where the three of them had stayed, packed up all the luggage, food and other sundries, and bundled them up tightly. Just about to lift it up and go out. Boom. Suddenly there was a gunshot in the corridor, and then the sound of the doorboard cracking and shattering. He rushed out quickly with his bag in hand. The corridor was empty, and there was no movement at all. The door to the next room was still locked and intact. Then where did the sound I heard earlier come from? His scalp tightened. Just now he clearly heard the sound of gunfire and the door breaking, but now even Bai Ying was missing. Is it because of the metal? He vaguely guessed the reason. Looking at the locked door in front of him, Garen knew in his heart that if no measures were taken, Tailai might die directly inside. Although I have returned your favor, he took out his pistol and pointed it at the door lock. Bang bang bang. 3 gunshots were fired. The keyhole was completely smashed. Garen gave a hard knock and immediately opened the door. There was no one in the room. The big bed in the room had been moved away, and a sloping exit appeared on the floor under the bed, leading to the stairs on the first floor. Garen took a deep breath, walked to the secret exit and looked down. Looking down from this angle, on the ground directly facing the first floor, Mercury in the tower was lying motionless on the ground. Tailai, Garen jumped down from the exit without thinking about anything, grabbed a few stair railings as a buffer, and landed firmly next to Tailai. Tailai. How are you? He helped the detective up and checked to see if he was still breathing. The detective slowly opened his eyes and muttered something vaguely. My bottom. My bottom. Only then did Garen notice that the bronze cross was still pressed where the detective was lying. There was actually a clear white scratch on the edge of the metal, which seemed to have been scratched on by the detective just now. Only then did Tailai wake up a little, sitting up independently and breathing heavily. It's so dangerous. In the blink of an eye, you couldn't see anyone anymore. I discovered a big secret in the room alone. Don't worry about it for now. Bai Ying is gone, Garen said solemnly. I heard him break into the door just now, but when I went over, I saw that the door was still intact. White Eagle is missing. Tailai looked calm. Don't worry too much. White Eagle is stronger than the two of us. If we are fine, he should be fine too. What should we do now? Us. Garen helped the detective stand up, but neither of them picked up the medal. The antique of misfortune is indeed the antique of misfortune. I have seen it this time. Tailai Mercury looked at the medal on the ground with a complicated expression. Now we just need to stand where we are and wait. He drew his gun and pointed it in the air. Bang bang bang. 3 shots were fired. The sound of gunfire was extremely harsh, temporarily suppressing the sound of rain outside. Soon, a white shadow rushed down from the stairs on the second floor and landed in front of the two of them. Are you okay? Bai Ying asked loudly after standing still. It's okay, Tailai nodded. I just saw the people from Jinhuan. They were indeed up to something. Me too. When I saw a figure jumping from the window, I immediately chased him out, Bai Ying said solemnly, but unfortunately I didn't catch him. You follow me. Bai Ying led the two of them out of the gate on the first floor and walked to a small pavilion sheltered from the rain on the left side of the castle entrance. There was a body of a man in black lying in the pavilion. A large area of red blood dripped from his chest. When it flowed onto the lawn, it was diluted by the heavy rain. Bai Ying grabbed the man's left ear and pulled off a golden earring. Golden ring no 114. He threw the golden ring to the tower. The hundreds of members of the Golden Circle are indeed causing trouble. He walked to the body and began to examine it carefully. Then he asked Bai Ying for some specific details, and began to slowly analyze based on his reasoning. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 53. Garen did not listen to their analysis. He stood slightly back and paid careful attention to the surrounding situation. Not far away, the two people were talking vaguely, and Garen was paying attention to the area behind him. Standing at the back, he watched the two people standing and squatting in the pavilion in front through the rain. The voice of analysis and reasoning came intermittently with the wind. Garen looked up and looked at the room where they came down before. There was a person standing vaguely at the window there, and it was so dark that it was difficult to see his face clearly. The room was also pitch black, and even the figure could not be distinguished. Garen looked at the figure quietly without making a sound. Let's go. I found the key to the problem. Tailai Mercury and two others came over at this time and patted Galen on the shoulder. Take the lead and walk towards the castle gate. Garen hurriedly followed and looked at the second-floor window. Sure enough, it was empty. The three of them walked into the hall on the first floor one after another and came to the place where the mercury fell from the tower before. The great detective squatted on the ground to check something, and then looked at the bronze cross medal still on the ground, seeming to be calculating something. After a while, he stood up again. Follow me. Garen knew he must have grasped something. Following the detective with Bai Ying, the three of them walked to the back of the stairs on the first floor. Tailai groped on the ground in the corner for a while, and suddenly pulled up a black wooden door. Suddenly there was an entrance similar to a cellar on the ground. The dark square entrance was opened, and a strong smell of blood suddenly overflowed from inside. The three people's expressions froze and they exchanged glances. Bai Ying took out a match and lit it lightly. Laugh. Under the subtle light of the match, the three of them could clearly see the scene inside the entrance. This small indoor cellar was actually filled with corpses. The corpses were all dressed in black and had gold earrings on their ears. Even though they were mentally prepared, the three of them were still frightened by so many corpses, and they all gasped. For a moment, he didn't even recover. After a while, Bai Ying was the first to react. Sure enough, they are from Jinhuan. What's going on? He took out the top human body from inside. So many people died here. Number 89, the two-digit Jinhuan is not easy to kill. Tailai frowned and said, I also accidentally discovered a clue. I didn't expect that if I followed it, I would get this result. It seems that this castle is more mysterious than we imagined. He has only been dead for less than a day. Bai Ying checked the body and said solemnly. What now, Tailai? I still have some questions that I haven't thought about clearly. Let's leave here first. Tailai Mercury looked around, as if he was wary of any enemies around him. It is no longer safe here. Staying here is not an option. We will go back and report to the police station immediately and mobilize police forces. Where's the medal? Garen joked in a low voice. You're not going to go back to that room by yourself again, are you? He forced a smile. The atmosphere was really heavy. When Fu Tailai Mercury heard these words, he was suddenly shocked and stood there in a daze, as if he remembered something. That's right. The location of the medal. I actually ignored this key point. I didn't think of it just now, he murmured to himself. Follow me. He suddenly turned around and started running, looking sideways at the reliefs on the wall. Garen and Bai Ying ran behind him inexplicably, running directly from the back of the stairs to a study-like room. Talai moved an empty bookshelf and patted it on the ground. He quickly found another pull ring and lifted it up with all his strength. With a crash, a large piece of wood was lifted up, revealing the wide, dark entrance below. Talai took the match struck by the white eagle and shined it inside. At the entrance is a metal staircase. The black stairs that go all the way down. Garin leaned over to take a look. The entrance was very wide. In front of the three of them was a black metal staircase that extended downwards. Talai Mercury didn't say much, just let go of the board and leaned to the side, keeping it open, tucked his shirt into his pants, and walked straight away. Bai Ying followed closely behind, and Garin changed his position and looked down from the entrance. Circles of spiral staircases went all the way down, spreading into the dark depths with no end in sight. Like a spiral funnel. Let's go down and take a look first. Please stay on top and shoot if anything happens. Talai turned around and whispered. Garin nodded. Looking at the circles of counterclockwise spiral stairs inside, extending to such depths that there is no end in sight, I felt a little chill in my heart. The two people who entered earlier lit a short torch in their hands, and the light they held seemed extremely weak in the spiral staircase. Garin thought for a moment, picked up a piece of rotten bookshelf wood from beside him, weighed it was a little heavy, and threw it directly into the middle of the stairs. The black wood rolled and fell, and then there was no sound at all. The two people who had just gone down and not gone far also stopped. They didn't know what they were looking for in the tower. After lighting it, they also threw it into the center. The red and flaming small pieces rolled and fell downwards, illuminating the surrounding scene along the way. There are dense circles of stairs all around, and the red light is getting smaller and smaller, getting further and further away. Soon it turned into a small dot, and then completely submerged into darkness, and nothing could be seen. When Talai and Bai Ying saw this result, they immediately turned around decisively and walked up. He quickly returned to the entrance and got out. I have estimated that the depth of this staircase is at least 500 meters. It may even be deeper, Talai Mercury said solemnly. The fundamental secret of Yinsha Castle may be here, or this may be the ultimate destination of the Golden Ring. The two of them had only been down for a while, but there was a strong musty smell on their bodies, their whole bodies were cold, and their faces were slightly pale. Just by leaning next to the two of them, Garin could feel the chill coming from their bodies. Let's find someone to come over and investigate carefully tomorrow during the day. I'm sure even the people here in Jinhuan won't be able to figure it out for a while, Bai Ying suggested. By the way, I just found this in the room. Kelly, what do you think it is? Talai Mercury handed over a small black gemstone ring. The ring was silver, but there was a faint red rust stain. Garin took it and inspected it carefully. It's nothing, it's not an antique of bad luck, it's just an ordinary iron ring. I don't know what the black gem in the middle is made of. I guess it's black crystal. During this period, he gained a lot of knowledge on the appraisal of antique jewelry doors, and he was able to identify the rough material. Things from 50 or 60 years ago, he added. Really? But I feel like this thing may have a very important role, Talai muttered as he took back the ring. That's right, Bai Ying suddenly said, I was still a little angry when I found the Jinhuan man just now. What's strange is that he actually said that we killed the Jinhuan man, and we killed a lot of them. He frowned. But we didn't meet those people he mentioned at all. What happened to those corpses in the cellar? It seems that this castle is not an ordinary place. Apart from us, there are still people who can cause heavy damage to the Golden Ring. Talai Mercury closed his eyes and seemed to be thinking. Let's get out of here first. We have to carefully check the information here. He opened his eyes and said calmly. Although I really want Jinhuan's group to disappear completely, it still feels very uncomfortable to be framed and unjustly accused like this. Bai Ying shrugged. That's all we can do. We can't stay here tonight. Garin nodded in agreement. The three of them restored the original furnishings in the study, quietly left the castle, and trotted away in the direction of Konu town in the rain. In the dark night, under the heavy rain, the three figures quickly disappeared into the darkness. The heavy raindrops still hit the surface of the castle intensively, making a crashing sound. More than 2 hours later, the night deepened and the rain eased slightly. A figure quickly ran back from the direction where the three people left. It was Garen in a black suit. With calm eyes, he changed his clothes and covered his face with a black mask. He jogged back along the same route and walked around to a French window on the right side of the castle. The window had no glass and was empty. He held it up with both hands and flipped in easily. He quietly left the small room and walked directly to the lobby on the first floor. Just as he entered the hall, a black figure suddenly stood on the edge of the stairs, his back turned to him motionless, facing the direction of the cellar where the body was found. Garen's expression was stern, but he still inevitably made footsteps. Who? The figure suddenly turned around and looked over. Click. A flash of lightning flashed, illuminating the golden ring on his left ear. That's a big number 10. Garen's eyes turned cold and he walked out slowly. Since you are from Jinhuan, hand over your things. I can let you leave alive. His voice was hoarse and he deliberately spoke in a falsetto. The person who turned around was a tall woman with long hair tied into a ponytail high behind her head. Her eyes were light purple, her face was cold, and she was dressed in tight black clothes, giving her a cool and simple temperament. Let me leave alive? I don't know, the woman said coldly. You came here for that thing too. What do you think? Garen sneered and raised his right hand back violently. Boom. A man in black behind him was knocked away, fell to the ground and rolled several times, hitting the wall and making no movement. I told you, hand over your things and I can let you leave here alive. Without even looking at the attacker behind him, he walked slowly towards the purple-eyed woman. The closer he got, the more he felt the aura of potential permeating the other person's body. The purple-eyed woman sneered. Very good, you are qualified to let me take action seriously. She bowed slightly. Hiss. The sound of continuous breathing slowly sounded. The woman reached out and grabbed her collar. I want to take your head to pay homage to my dead brother. The woman's purple eyes became darker and darker. Her hands made an up and down grasping motion, as if she were holding something on her chest, leaving an oval space between her palms. Tiangang, ba. The woman suddenly inhaled again, and her whole body expanded rapidly. Thick muscles wrapped with veins covered her body. The sound of her breathing between her mouth and nose was like a huge airbag sucking air. In just a few seconds, the woman changed from a slim and cold-eyed woman to a powerful woman with strong muscles, no less than a galleon. The muscles all over her body were tangled, like steel ropes bouncing under her skin. A huge airflow slowly spread around her, and a huge and scorching body temperature heat made the surrounding area slightly warm. Is it a secret weapon? Garen's eyes narrowed. The muscles all over the body slowly tightened. Call. He took a deep breath and slowly moved into the starting position of the giant elephant gate. No matter which way you look at it, it's going to be a tough battle to get the doomed antique that was unexpectedly discovered today. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 54. The woman's eyes were deep purple, as if they were about to drip purple liquid. Boom. She took a step forward, the ground shook slightly, and her whole body shot straight towards Garen like an arrow from a string. Viewed from above, a straight line is drawn on the floor of the hall. Their arms connected, their fists and palms collided, and tiny beads of sweat spilled onto the ground. Bang! Garen maintained a blocking posture with his palms and was forcefully pushed back several meters, almost hitting the wall. The woman said nothing in front of him, bumped her fists together, and slammed forward again. There were violent crashes one after another. The two of them did not move anymore. They stood on the same spot and exchanged punches. The huge force caused the window lattice around the hall to slowly shake, and the sound of the rain was gradually covered up. Every time their fists collided, their bodies shook slightly, and the faint cracking of bones could be heard. Collapse. The woman roared violently, blowing out a stream of hot air from her nostrils, and her right fist disappeared instantly. Before Garin could react, the disappearing fist appeared directly in front of his chest. With a bang, his chest visibly dented and he flew backwards. It hit the wall with a bang. The walls of the hall shook suddenly, and a large amount of fine ash fell down, sprinkling on the two of them, like white flowers splashed all over them. The woman sneered. "Under my Tiangang tyranny, it's pretty good that you were able to confront me head-on for so long." The chandelier holder above her head suddenly fell down with a click and hit her head. This lamp holder is dark, weighs hundreds of pounds, and is made entirely of metal. The ceiling is more than 10 meters high. If it falls and hits someone, it can easily kill and injure an adult strong man. The woman raised her head and glanced at the lamp holder, raised her right fist to meet it, and exploded it in two with a bang, hitting the walls on both sides. She moved her right fist, but there was no damage to the skin of her fist. Garin took the opportunity to stand up and stabilize his body. He looked at the purple-eyed woman with a gloomy expression, his thoughts changing rapidly. Originally, when I opened the corpse cellar, I found an antique of doom inside. I didn't expect that the other party was also looking for that item. This guy is not weak. However, the more antiques of bad luck, the better. If you finally encounter one, you must not let it go. Although she is strong, my explosive boxing technique is not a vegetarian. He felt that his chest was still aching. Take a deep breath and stand still. White Cloud's secret technique, he growled in his heart. The muscles all over his body slowly expanded, as if a human-shaped balloon was slowly being inflated and enlarged, rapidly growing from 1.7 meters to 1.9 meters. The head becomes slightly smaller in contrast to the expanded muscles. "It seems that I underestimated you." He calmly walked back to his original position and faced the woman from a distance. The two were only a few meters away. "But I think you misunderstood. I didn't kill your people." "Didn't you kill him?" the woman sneered. "If you weren't in this barren mountain, how could you have managed to find another secret martial artist?" Her eyes kept scanning Garin. As a martial arts expert who has reached the limits of the human body, her eyesight naturally had a corresponding level, and she could easily tell that the man in front of her had reached the limit of human power. "I don't care what sect you are, if you mess with my golden ring, you'll get endless revenge." Before she finished speaking, the woman let out a long roar and rushed forward, like a white giant python silently drawing a subtle arc. Her fists were like the upper and lower fangs of a python, opening and closing, constantly changing positions to bite Garin. Python thorn. When the woman's fists crossed together, she made a faint sound of rubbing the air. This move is her real killer move. It looks like the upper and lower fists are the attack point. In fact, the metal serrations hidden in the soles of her legs are the real killer move. Although her opponent obviously has powerful hard Qigong, her legs have strangled countless hard Qigong masters. As long as she is bitten by this bite, she can bite through even the toughest muscles and bones. She once used this move to bite through a thick wooden board that was as wide as a finger. One move. Kill you. Most of her body's strength was concentrated on the toes of her feet. Silently, a touch of silvery white slowly popped up from the soles of her black boots. Garin watched calmly as the woman rushed towards him. It was not very fast, but the huge and heavy hot air blew in his face, as if a real white giant python was rushing towards him ferociously, and hissing sounds continued as its fangs opened and closed. He slowly turned his body, facing forward with the right side of his body. Bang! The two of them bumped into each other fiercely and stuck to each other, but no one even stepped back. The forearms were crossed to block each other. Their faces were so close that they could even hear each other's breathing clearly. Tisk. There were two crisp sounds of tearing fabric, and a trace of pride flashed in the woman's eyes. Her feet had already been strangled hard on Garen's waist, and her whole body seemed to be wrapped around Garen's waist, forming an unusually ambiguous posture. Her beautiful figure and appearance might have made people think of her before, but now she is also covered in muscles, fierce and tall, wrapped around Garen's waist like two muscular men wrestling in sumo. The woman was topless and her skin was white. Garen was wearing a large black shirt, and his bulging muscles were still mostly black. In this way, the two people's figures are extremely distinct. At this time, the blades on the woman's boots cut hard into the two kidneys on the back of Garen's waist, and her whole body hung on Garen's body. Goodbye, she laughed softly. Garen suddenly laughed ferociously. It's me who should say this. His right elbow suddenly hit forward, as if a black pestle hit the woman's face hard. Bang! The two of them separated instantly, and little bits of red blood were scattered on the floor. The woman stumbled backwards, her body almost unbalanced, and she simply knelt down. Are you okay? She raised her head and stared at Garen in disbelief. Blood was slowly oozing from her mouth, nose, eyes, and ears. She was hit hard on the elbow, and even now her whole body is still shaking violently, as if her whole body is in a big bell that is being struck, and her ears are ringing. This is Zhen. Damn it! He is actually a master who has mastered Zhen. She stared at Garen in disbelief. Garen touched his lower back. There were two shallow cuts on the waist and kidneys, and blood was oozing faintly. It's a pity, if it were anyone else, you might be able to twist the person in half with this move. It's a pity that you met me. He slowly pushed towards the woman. Ha ha ha! The woman suddenly laughed in a low voice. What a terrifying hard qigong! She stood up and reached back with her right hand, and a silver pistol appeared in her hand. It's a pity you met me. Her body size seemed to have shrunk a lot after the close combat just now, and her muscles were not as strong as before. Noticing this, the woman folded her arms again. Tiangang Bailey. After a fierce intake of breath, her body returned to its original form. Combat spear skills. She rushed over again, like a white line. Garen raised his right elbow again and released the only and most powerful shooting form he had mastered. Suddenly he felt numbness in his lower back. Oops! It's poisonous. The waist suddenly became weak, and the whole body could not even maintain its basic posture. He didn't have time to think about it and raised his arms with all his strength to block him. Bang bang bang. 3 consecutive gunshots rang out, and Garen slammed into the wall behind him. His arms, right side of his face, and lower abdomen were all embedded with 3 brass bullets. A rusty taste suddenly rose in his throat. Oops! The pistol was too close and was shocked. Generally, pistol bullets have to stay in the human body to have greater lethality. If fired at such a close distance, the penetrating power is too great. The key is definitely not heavy in the hands of ordinary people. At most, it will cause penetrating damage, but if it is increased, long skin hardening qigong was too strong. The strong penetration at such a close distance only served to penetrate the skin, and the bullet successfully penetrated his body. The bullet on the right side of his face was originally aimed at his eyebrow, but he dodged it in time. But the other 2 parts were a complete hit. At the same time, he was hit hard by a punch on both arms. The force was not strong, but it was just enough to break open his frame and let the bullet hit the side of his face. With his back pressed against the wall, Garen didn't have time to breathe when he saw a white shadow rushing toward him. The silver metal blade on his foot drew a silver arc and cut into his lower abdomen where he was shot. The blade is poisonous, and a few more hits will definitely kill you. Damn! Garen roared. The opponent was extremely fast. Although it was not as fast as number 101, it was still much faster than him. At this moment, he could already feel the cold touch of the blade touching his lower abdomen. Since you can't hide, Let's see who can resist better. Ah! He roared violently, clamped his abdominal muscles to stop the blade from escaping, and grabbed the opponent's right leg with his left hand to prevent him from escaping. His right fist hit the purple-eyed woman on the head. Bang! Uh-huh, the woman was hit hard on the head by a punch, and she leaned back violently, with blood splattering everywhere. Her right eye was blown out by the punch, and her eye socket was bloody. The two of them separated, both panting violently. The fight lasted only a short time, but the battle was extremely brutal, and both of them were almost seriously injured. The woman's right eye was blown out, her whole body was shaken, and more blood flowed from her facial features. Garin was poisoned, and the numbness in his lower back became more and more severe, and his lower abdomen also began to feel numb. If the woman's strength wasn't a little weaker and the blade wasn't long, she might have pierced his abdomen directly. Garin leaned against the wall. This was the first time he encountered such a well-matched opponent. Although the opponent's defense was not as good as his own, and he had not mastered the technique of shock. But the strength is not bad at all. The blades on the feet can easily penetrate into one's own skin and muscles under the impact of huge force. The high-intensity defense of the explosive boxing technique is not a difficult line of defense for the opponent. Coupled with the combination of the pistol and the toxin, Garin knew that there was no need to try to get the mysterious antique of doom today. Big loss this time, he murmured in a low voice, raised his head, and saw the woman opposite standing up unsteadily, the silver pistol in her hand slowly raised and pointed at him. Bang bang bang. Only one of the 3 bullets hit Garin's left arm. The bullet didn't even penetrate the skin, it just left a red mark on the surface and bounced off. It made a crisp sound when it rolled to the ground. Your eyes are ruined. Hee hee, wouldn't it be over if you handed the things to me earlier? It must be like this. Garin gloated and laughed. You're fine. The purple-eyed woman took 2 steps back and sat down on the ground. It's a pity that you were poisoned. If you die, you will only die before me. If you can die in the hands of my 10th golden ring, you will not be buried. She spoke in fits and starts, gasping for air. It seemed that he was a little unconscious after being punched twice in the head. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 55. Garin knew that this was the effect of the concussion, and the internal organs of the woman opposite her should have been injured by the concussion. The second stage of his bursting boxing technique was not particularly lethal, and it might be hard to tell because of internal bleeding. Originally, he had absolute confidence in his own strength. If he was serious about it, he would have to fight even the 3rd senior brother. General pistols no longer pose a threat to him. In addition, he originally planned to return quietly, dig out his things and leave. Unexpectedly, he encountered a purple-eyed woman who happened to come over and found the corpse of his man. It had always been smooth sailing, and Garin was completely unaware of how ferocious his opponent was, with guns, punches, poison, everything. We have to get out of here, but the numbness in my lower back got worse and worse. Garin sneered, stopped talking, and focused his attention on the attribute bar. The potential column is already at 233%, and you can add points twice in a row. Physique determines the resistance and self-healing ability. If you add it now, it may have some effect on the poison. He was in a state of desperation and had no choice now. He had to hold on and leave here immediately, otherwise something would happen. It's no joke that so many people from Golden Circle died here. Under his gaze, a certain attribute was directly added to his physique. Constitution increased from 1.57 to 1.87. At the moment when his physique increased, Garin only felt numbness all over his body, but returned to normal just a second later. The toxin numbness in his lower back and lower abdomen was relieved a lot, and he became much stronger, enough to stand up on his own. It really works. He felt happy. I lost a lot of money this time for an unknown antique of bad luck. I also made a grudge against a master from the Golden Ring. If I don't kill him completely, there will be endless consequences. He felt cruel, knowing that if he didn't kill the other party now, he would be in trouble later. Standing up, he began to walk step by step towards the purple-eyed woman opposite. You can still move, the purple-eyed woman covered her right eye, and her remaining left eye stared at Garen in disbelief. After being poisoned by Roman cow, he can still move on his own. Her whole body was numb, she was bleeding profusely and was extremely weak. Although she could still move her body and use her gun, this was of no use to the other party. At this point, it's too late to change bullets. It's over, Garen forced an ugly smile on his face. He felt that his body was recovering rapidly. The 0.3 constitution he just added seemed to have a great effect on his body. The numbness in his waist became less and less, and the wound on his abdomen gradually returned to normal pain. Hurry up! Your Excellency has been waiting for a while. Suddenly there was a rush of footsteps outside. Garen's expression changed, he glanced at the woman one last time, turned around and trotted away decisively, jumped out of the floor-to-ceiling window where he came from, turned a corner and disappeared directly into the rain. The woman lowered her head and panted heavily until Garen's figure completely left the hall. Blood dripped from the fingers of her right hand, which was covering her eyes, and fell on the dark ground. She pulled the clothes she had thrown away earlier to cover her body, and her body slowly began to shrink, like a deflating balloon, and soon returned to its original beautiful figure. The door of the hall was banged open, and two men and women in black, one tall and one short, walked in quickly. As soon as they came in, they saw the mess on the ground and the purple-eyed woman sitting on the ground. Startled. "Sir." "It's okay." The tall man hurriedly rushed to the purple-eyed woman and squatted down. "Get away!" Bang. There was a muffled sound, and the man took a few steps back. His face turned slightly pale and he looked at the incision on his chest with lingering fear. A slit was neatly cut out of his clothes, and his skin was almost scratched. Another woman in black, petite in stature, stood aside and laughed happily. The purple-eyed woman sat on the ground. "How's that for what I asked you to do?" "Sir, I went to Shui Yin's house in the tower and several of Bai Ying's hiding places, but I couldn't find those two little guys. They probably hid somewhere." The woman bowed and answered respectfully. The man in black adjusted his clothes, watched the purple-eyed woman begin to bandage his eye wound, and also whispered respectfully. "I was able to defend the two little guys, but White Eagle's friend Black Panther ran out to disrupt the situation and escaped with the two kids." "A bunch of trash," the purple-eyed woman roared and stood up from the ground. The bleeding in her right eye had been stopped and it was wrapped with white gauze. "I can't even catch a little white eagle. It seems that I have to apply for new help from the higher-ups. After a while, I will recover from my injuries and do it myself to kill the white eagle." She subconsciously looked at where Garen was standing and said bitterly, "If a master hadn't suddenly appeared this time and we would both suffer losses, tomorrow would be Lily's Memorial Day." "The 10th master," the petite woman said, "your plan is to surround Lily." However, Bai Ying, Lily's personal disciple, was able to escape from Canary every time in the past few times. This pair of members of the organization, the plan has been greatly hindered. I don't think things will be such a coincidence every time. Maybe. You mean, the purple-eyed woman's face sank, and she looked at the man in black. "Canary, do you have anything to say?" "Do you think I let him go on purpose?" the man said in disbelief. "I have no reason to do this. I will investigate carefully. Mercury and White Eagle in the tower are just small players. Any one of you can solve it. The main task now is to kill Lily. Everything else is easy. This old guy has been against the organization for many years. If not she, that little detective can't be so bold as to go against us." The 10th Golden Ring said coldly, "Okay, you two can get out. Let people from outside come in and take away the bodies of our brothers." We will immediately withdraw. The two of them did not dare to say anything more, lowered their heads and slowly exited the hall. Standing in the rain, the man named Canary looked at the knife in his chest with a depressed expression, not caring that he had been framed by the woman just now. Lola, the 10th Master's hard Qigong has reached a level that is difficult for bullets to penetrate. What kind of opponent will we encounter this time that can actually defeat both adults? Who knows? The petite woman didn't know what she was chewing in her mouth and said nonchalantly, the 10th sister hasn't suffered such a big loss in many years. Now she has something to play with. A group of men in black were approaching quickly in the rain. The petite woman stepped forward to greet them and began to quickly arrange their work one by one. Entering the hall and removing the corpses from the cellar, the men in black each had a golden earring stuck in their ears. They were uniform and their movements were silent. Garin trotted in the rain. Only a dozen meters around him could be seen in the grey raindrops. He ran directly to the town of Kenu along the path in the forest. The numbness in his waist and abdomen became weaker and weaker, but there was still a little bit left that could not be eliminated. The raindrops hit his face and body, making him feel ice cold, and the air was unusually cold. Breathing it into his lungs was slowly reducing the heat in his body. There were faint traces of white water vapor all over Garin's body, suggesting that the rain evaporated due to high body temperature. He wiped his face, and his hands were covered with makeup powder and serum. My makeup is gone and I haven't got my stuff. It's better to go directly to the martial arts gym. I'll take care of it at the martial arts gym before going home. When he left a message to Talai Shuiyan and Bai Ying, saying that he would go back for a while and come over tomorrow to go to Yinsha Castle together. It solves the worries. It's just that it's probably a little tricky to hide that message from the Mercury in the tower. Garin jogged while organizing his thoughts. Ignore the matter over there, he will know my identity sooner or later anyway. But who is the woman I met just now? If there are no remaining attribute points, I may have to go back seriously injured this time. Jin, is there such a strong woman in the ring? I really don't know how Bai Ying and the others were able to resist before. He suddenly recalled the bronze cross lying on the floor of the room on the second floor. I hope the people in Jinhuan can also taste the taste of Yinsha Castle. He sneered a few times, then pulled at the wound on his abdomen and coughed loudly. Since practicing martial arts, his physical strength has become stronger and stronger, but the desire contained in his body has become more and more accumulated, like a volcano that may erupt at any time. The powerful power obtained through hard training and supernatural powers cannot be used in ordinary life. This makes Garin feel as if he is holding a fire in his heart, which may burst out at any time as time goes by. Although he was seriously injured in this battle, it also released the suppressed impulse in Garin's body to a certain extent. Next time I meet you, I will definitely win, Garin recalled the purple-eyed woman with a hint of coldness on his face. He could clearly feel his current state, and his mood was not as comfortable as usual. He opened his mouth to smile, but suddenly he pulled at the wound on his abdomen. His nerves ached and he stopped laughing. Grass, he punched the big tree next to him furiously. With a snap, a hole was cut through the thick green tree trunk that one person hugged, exposing the yellow-white inner bark of the trunk. A little bit of white juice flowed out and was immediately washed away by the rain. Without even looking at the tree trunk, Garin accelerated and ran towards Konu town. Through this battle, he has roughly figured out his level of strength. The overall strength should be similar to that of the purple-eyed woman. They are on par with each other. It is stronger than the third senior brother in a life and death fight, but it is much weaker than the second senior brother and senior sister. As for the master, I don't know, but his strength should not exceed that of the senior sister. After all, his physical fitness declines with age. What rank can such strength reach in a regular circle? Garin is somewhat looking forward to it. He plans to go back and take the rank test after clarifying the Yinsha Castle with Talai Mercury this time to see where he can go. Location: Both the senior sister and the master think that they are only in the E-level rank. Anyone who can reach the letter level rank is not an ordinary level. So it seems that I am at most an amateur rank, and can't even reach the lowest letter level rank. Garen had some doubts in his heart. He felt that it was unlikely that the senior sister and the master would only have the superficial strength. They should at least be at the next level. I just don't know what the lowest level judgment of this rank is. I can check the information when I go back. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 56. It's you again. In the white medical room, Drsha from Konu town sat next to Garen, carefully using tweezers to remove the brass bullet from his arm. Then slowly put it on the metal plate on the table on the side. Ding. The bullet rolled on the plate and made a crisp sound. Tisk, tisk, this bullet is bent. Fortunately, it penetrated something before hitting you, otherwise you will definitely suffer this time. Dr. Ash shook his head and smiled. You had a dislocated bone last time, but this time it was a gunshot wound. Did you encounter a robber? Yes, Garen nodded. If I hadn't been lucky this time, I would have definitely been doomed. Those robbers all wore golden earrings on their ears, and they also took away my treasures. If I hadn't practiced martial arts for a while, I'm afraid this time I really fell into trouble. With a groan, he took out the bullet from his lower abdomen and threw it into the metal disc with a clanking sound. These hateful guys, our townspeople often encounter them, and every time they can only spend money to eliminate disasters. Dr. Ash shook his head and said helplessly, I think you should go to the police station in Huaishan City to register. Forget it, this case probably won't be solved in a day or two. He took an alcohol cotton ball and began to scrub and clean Garen's wound. The alcohol was applied to the wound, causing Garen to grit his teeth from time to time and endure the pain. After washing the wound, Drsc took out a small brown bottle from the medical bag, unscrewed the cap and dipped it in with a cotton swab. The white cotton swab was immediately soaked in purple potion, giving off a pungent smell like disinfectant. Jialongbai endured the pain with his teeth clenched as he watched Dr. Ash apply the medicine little by little to the wounds on his body. His face is now yellow and white, and his eyes are one big and one small. This is because the makeup has not been completely rinsed off, but it can still hide his true face. By the way, Dr. Ash, the Mercury detective from Talai, heard that he arrived in Konu town. Is he still here now? Detective Talai, Dr. Ash thought for a moment. I don't know about this, but I saw him getting on the carriage to Yinsha Castle with 2 other people in the morning. I wonder if he is back now. Garen nodded and said no more. 10 minutes later, all the wounds were finally treated and the medical fee was paid. Garen put on his wet clothes and was about to go out. Wait a minute, Drsc called him from behind. Are you just going to go out like this? Although it's not raining outside, your clothes are still wet. Aren't all the wounds I worked so hard to treat in vain? It doesn't matter, I'm strong enough, nothing will happen to me. Garen smiled and didn't care much. You don't care, I still care, Drsc muttered, walking into the small room behind the medical room, and soon took out a dusty suit. Here are these clothes for you. Take them back and don't let the wounds get wet. I spent a lot of time and effort to bandage them. By the way, remember to return the clothes to me. Garen smiled, took off his wet clothes, and took the grey suit. Thank you. I'll come over in a few days to return your clothes. Hurry up. Don't get discovered. Dr. Ash waved his hand impatiently. Remember to be careful and don't let the wound get wet. Garen nodded, put on dry clothes, and strode out with the wet coat in his hand. It was pitch dark outside, and I didn't know what time it was at night. Garen stood at the door of the doctor's courtyard and looked out. There was no sound of anyone around. Woof woof. A faint barking of a dog came from not far away, making it seem more lonely and quiet. The surrounding houses were all dark, with no lights at all. A faint moonlight fell from the sky, and I could barely see the roads in the town. Garen closed the courtyard door with his backhand and suddenly felt tired. We just had a fierce fight, and then we ran for such a long time. It took more than half an hour to treat the wounds. It seems that my body finally couldn't hold on anymore. He put on his grey suit and strode out of the town. Walk along the main road. He seemed to be the only one in the dark town. The houses on both sides were like black shadows, silent and silent. Only his footsteps echoed slowly and rhythmically. There was a snap. He stepped into a small puddle and dirty water splashed all over his trousers. Garen cursed in a low voice and walked forward quietly along the corner. Slowly advancing along the main road, Garen checked his current attribute column. There is one last attribute, I can't use it all at once this time, I have to think about it carefully. He reached out and touched the black jade plate in his trouser pocket. A stream of cool air flowed into the skin of his outer thigh continuously. Although it was very slow, it was valuable in that it continued uninterrupted. The improvement of attributes requires a long period of accumulation to produce qualitative changes, and the qualitative improvement of skills is the most critical. My current skills. Garen's gaze shifted to the skill bar above the attribute bar. Skimming over insignificant skills such as basic swordsmanship and basic archery, his eyes focused on a few separate special skills. Baiun's secret technique, Dachin, level 4, exploding fist technique, intermediate. Baiun's fighting skills, elementary. One of Baiun's secret techniques has completely turned grey and obviously cannot be improved any further. Garen has cultivated this secret technique to an unprecedented level. Only the talented second senior brother in the martial arts school can compare with him in terms of strength. The bursting boxing technique has reached the intermediate level and is really powerful. In this battle with the purple-eyed woman, he only hit the opponent twice, but these 2 times directly severely injured the opponent, completely ignoring the opponent's equally terrifying hard Qigong. Hit the inside directly through the surface. The masters of Dezhen are really powerful. They are the nemesis of hard Qigong masters like me who are superficially strong. I have to pay attention in the future. Garen himself was also secretly wary. He tried it, but couldn't improve the bursting fist technique. It obviously required some special conditions. From beginner to intermediate level, he also used the pills in the main hall and took one every day, so that he could slowly improve. Baiun fighting skills. Garen recalled the previous confrontation. If I hadn't been physically strong enough and exchanged injuries with the opponent, I would have really been in trouble this time. My fighting skills were opened by the opponent with a light punch. If we really wanted to fight, as long as the woman was careful, somehow I won't have a chance to hurt her. If my fighting skills were stronger, I wouldn't need to use this fighting method at all. My defense is stronger than hers, and my boxing skills are better than hers. I can kill her easily, Garen thought thoughtfully. My Baiun secret technique has reached the top level, and my body's muscles have increased, and my defense has doubled. There is no need to be afraid of fighting with the second senior brother. My explosion fist technique has reached the second level, and everyone in the main hall can count on it. Only a few people, including second senior brother, can achieve this. Their physical fitness is not that strong either. Under such conditions, they are still like this. If it were senior sister, she would never be like this. Garen's eyes flashed. The core of the problem is that my actual combat experience is too poor. I can only contain the enemy after taking the trick and then return it. If it were replaced by a more cautious master. He immediately imagined the specific situation in his mind. The purple-eyed woman moved briskly around her, and from time to time she rushed over and made a small cut on her arm and thigh. The poisonous blade easily paralyzed herself. It seems that I have all the strength, but I haven't been able to use it well. He resisted the urge to add attribute points to his physical fitness, and his eyes finally slowly fell on Bayun's fighting skills. Snapped. Bayun's fighting skills jumped from elementary to intermediate. Garen felt his whole body tremble, and his limbs suddenly became more agile. He felt light and carefree when moving in all directions. The intermediate level of Bayun's fighting skills is to be able to use the 4 major forms at will with all 4 limbs, and to be able to be integrated into the frame without any lag, reaching an almost instinctive level. I just don't know what the advanced level is. Garen moved his limbs. It feels like everything within a meter or so is within one's precise control. He raised his knife and slashed forward casually. Laugh. The right hand unconsciously used the shooting knife, and there was a crisp sound in the air, as crisp as a firecracker. It turns out that I can only use the shooting kata with my right elbow. Now I can use the 4 major kata with all 4 limbs. It is indeed an intermediate fighting skill. A smile appeared on Garen's face. After trying out the speed of the 4 major forms with all 4 limbs, he could easily defeat the 2 previous versions of him. I can handle it even if I encounter a speed type this time. It's barely worthy of this strength. Garen nodded with satisfaction, then quickly walked into the darkness and got on the road back to Huaishan City. It was already past 2 o'clock in the evening when he returned to the city. Garen went directly to the martial arts gym and asked a garrison student to inform his family. The town of Konu. Kelly. You're here quite early. The sky was not bright and was very gray. At the open-air restaurant, Garen was sitting at a small round table in a silver suit, with a hint of smile in his red eyes. Grace stood on one side in a black secretary outfit, holding a black leather notebook in her hand. The two of them looked at Tailai Mercury, who was yawning and walking over, but neither of them spoke. Garen picked up the hot coffee on the table and took a sip. Tailai plopped down across from Garen. What happened to your face? Why is it wrapped with gauze? He picked up the hot coffee and drank it hard. Didn't you say you wanted to go back? It's just a scratch. Let's not talk about it for now. How was yesterday's incident? Is there any result? Garen asked softly. I'll go again today. Bai Ying has already notified the police station in Huaishan. It is estimated that people will be dispatched at noon. This is a big case, so many people died. It's troublesome. According to my analysis, there are many people in Jinhuan. Maybe they think that we have killed so many of their men, and if nothing else happens, we will probably run into trouble if we go to Yinsha Castle today. Tailai Mercury frowned and said worriedly. Garen raised his brows. Thinking of last night's situation, he was a little surprised by Tailai Mercury's reasoning and analysis. Jinhuan's reaction was completely expected by him. Is it possible that they still dare to fight against the police station? Tailai laughed. Kelly, you don't know, this kind of thing doesn't happen once or twice. He took out the pipe he forgot to bring yesterday, gently took out the match, lit it, and took a nice puff. Do you need me to call someone for help? Grace stood aside and suddenly said. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 57. That's not the case. We have enough manpower this time. But Kelly, you'd better not go. I'm going with Bai Ying and a friend. If something happens, it won't be easy to protect you, Tailai said with a frown. Don't worry, I can protect myself. Don't forget when you gave me the black jade plate. Garen winked at him. I guess you won't give up, so that's up to you. This time we plan to go to that place and take a closer look. By the way, look at this. Tailai took out an old yellow paper from his pocket and handed it to Garen. Garen took it and unfolded it. A colorful oil painting was drawn on the paper. A man was running forward on a wide gray plain. His back is facing the viewing surface of the oil painting, he has no head, and a flock of black birds are flying out from the break of his neck. There's more on the back, Tailai Mercury reminded. Galleons in turn. There is also a painting on the paper. A rough man's big hand stretched out from the ground, with an empty blood hole in the palm, and inside the hole stood a figure covered in black robes. There was a line of text below, but Garen couldn't understand it at all. The line below is a very ancient common language, Ikanta language. It means, to give the world the beauty of the soul. The color in the tower was slightly heavy. I checked some personal information. What do you want to do? Be mentally prepared. Garen nodded silently. He had a hunch that the matter at Yinsha Castle was probably not an ordinary trouble. Talai took a sip of coffee. This piece of paper was found from the place where we went yesterday. When I got this piece of paper, I immediately went back. Because I recognized the origin of this line of writing at a glance. He paused. Ikanta is said to be the language spoken by one of the most mysterious people in legend. Mysterious, Garen narrowed his eyes. They have always been hidden on the backside of the world. Their power is mysterious and weird. In legends, they often appear among devils and bloody monsters. No one sees the real existence among them. They are called warlocks. Warlock. Garen heard this term for the first time. Grace on one side let out a low cry. Could he be a powerful human being who learned magic in myths and legends? Yes. Talai Mercury nodded with a heavy face. It is said that warlocks are powerful humans who learn spells from devils and fear. The spells they learn are called magic because they learn from devils. In myths and legends, they will even mate with monsters and give birth to family descendants with terrifying bloodlines. They master the devil's magic. Among ordinary humans, some of them are nobles, some are businessmen, some are scholars, and some are travelers. Of course. These are just legends and myths, he concluded. It's just that there are not a few humans who worship warlocks, especially in ancient times. I suspect that the entrance is probably the product of this group of people. Garen was initially stunned, but only after hearing the final explanation did he realize that these were just legends. He recalled the memories of Garen's past. In myths and legends, I have vaguely heard legends about warlocks, but those are just false stories, right? What can humans who worship them do? Rituals, bloody sacrifices, making flutes from corpse leg bones, these are all possible. Anyway, it may be something like a cult. Then if that's the case, I'd better go take a look. Garen licked his lips. After all, those warlock magics don't really exist. Most of them are just things made by people. Talai Mercury nodded. I have encountered similar cases before, and they were also about ancient cults. Just like what you said, these things are indeed made by people. There is nothing mysterious about them, they are just excessively cruel and bloody. It's just that the golden ring also came in. The danger this time is much greater. You must know that there are always a lot of leftover devices such as cult rituals, and selling them as antiques can also be a considerable fortune. Now when are we going to go? We will go there together when Bai Ying and his friends come over. This time a group of police forces have been mobilized, so there shouldn't be much danger. Talai Mercury raised his wrist and looked at his watch. It's 6:40 now. Around, they should be here before 10 o'clock. Then we just wait here, Garen asked doubtfully. Wouldn't it be nice to take a good rest? Talai Mercury smiled. Don't be nervous. He stood up and patted Garen on the shoulder. We have to wait until our ancient mechanism expert arrives before we can safely explore the cave. Before that, just spend some time with yourself and your beautiful secretary and relax. Garen smiled helplessly and watched Talai Mercury get up and walk outside. He leaned back on the chair and his head suddenly touched a soft, warm, and firm ball. Grace, who was behind her, turned red and did not move away. She just let her breasts touch the back of Garen's head. Now I am equivalent to your spokesperson in the eyes of the company and an important link between you and the company. If you want, I will not refuse, she whispered. I don't like force. Garen smiled and stood up. We should go to Yinsha Castle in a little while. That place is very dangerous, so be careful. I may not be able to protect you. Don't worry, I'm fully prepared this time. The company sent people to protect us too. Speaking of which, I'm still taking advantage of you. Grace smiled and clapped her hands gently. Cynthia, why don't you come out yet? A beautiful girl with a strong figure slowly walked out of the bushes outside the open-air restaurant. The girl looked like a cute and innocent girl next door. She was wearing a low-cut tight dress, and the black fabric formed a sharp contrast with her white and delicate skin. Her lips were pink, her skin was like white and red jelly, and her shawl brown hair was slightly curly. Garen was also slightly stunned by this girl. Cynthia? Are you over 18 years old? He asked in shock, and at the same time looked around at other places in the small restaurant. Fortunately, because it was too early, he was the only one with a table in the restaurant. The fat boss was also dozing off at the cashier counter in the room. The girl's slender and round white legs are extremely eye-catching. She wears black boots that almost cover her entire calf. The company sent me here specifically to protect you too, and there is also a special team responsible for general security. Don't worry, Mr. Kelly, I am already 19 years old this year. This girl named Cynthia always has a faint smile, she looks pure and sunny, and her dark brown eyes are slightly curved like a cat. Gives people the feeling of smiling at all times. Plus slender, round legs and perky buttocks. The girl walked to Garen's seat and stood there. Sir Kelly, I was specially selected by the headquarters to be your personal guard. I can handle any task you give me. I can do everything that Sister Grace can do, and I can also do what she can't do. When she finished her last words, she slightly raised her plump breasts and raised her eyes at Grace. Grace's face turned cold. It was immediately clear that this was the company's move to send someone to replace her place in Garen's heart. It was obvious that this was the result of her and Garen's failure to achieve a closer relationship. Cynthia is the candidate sent by the company to replace her. This young and beautiful leader of the team is more powerful and looks better than herself. And more importantly, Cynthia is a special tool specially trained to win over high-ranking people. Do you think there is only a close relationship between men and women? She said coldly. But only that kind of relationship is the closest. Cynthia looked innocent and cute, putting her fingers to her mouth in a coquettish way. I can do anything for you, no matter what you want to do to me. She held the back of the chair and gently walked towards Garen. Garen smiled bitterly and stood up. Okay, stop making trouble. I understand the sincerity of Manlet & Company. But now is not the time to talk about this, right Cynthia? How many people did you bring here? As soon as business was mentioned, Cynthia immediately stood still and suppressed the smile on her face. There are 6 of us, plus 7 of us. We have been scattered around to take charge of warning patrols. Don't worry, we are elite bodyguards who have been trained by Weissmann Tricuspid Cone Company, and we can definitely guarantee your personal safety. In addition, we are elite bodyguards who have received training from Weissmann Tricuspid Cone Company. Lord Adrian hopes to meet with you after this incident. Adrian, Galen remembered this name. After spending time together, he also knew from Grace that Adrian was the real controller of Manlet & Company. The reason why he asked Grace to do things for him was because he sent the beautiful girl Cynthia to be his personal bodyguard, obviously with the intention of climbing up to Bayun Martial Arts Hall. The most important thing is that there was a conflict between the Manlet & Company and the family power of the third senior brother Garcia, which is another antique company power in Huaishan City. Manlet has always been suppressed and is at a disadvantage. Perhaps this meeting is to let him mediate the conflict with the third senior brother's family, hoping to escape disaster. Is it about the third senior brother? Garen didn't know whether the third senior brother would give him this face. But don't have high expectations. The third senior brother may not be the only one to make the decision on this kind of thing. Of course Cynthia nodded, but there was a trace of doubt in her eyes. She originally thought that the 16-year-old Garen was just an ordinary high school student who had risen to the top just because of his qualifications. No matter what his character was, he should not be able to withstand her temptation. Unexpectedly, the feeling after meeting was completely different from what I imagined. This Garen's mannerisms are completely different from those of an ordinary high school student, and would be almost the same as a real 30-year-old adult. Completely immune to the temptations of her body. Garen nodded with satisfaction. He understood that everything he had now was based on his status in Bayun martial arts school. Both Grace and Cynthia were so respectful to him only because of his status as a close disciple, rather than his own strength. However, he originally didn't attach much importance to these external forces. With his talents, he could fully embark on the path of continuously strengthening himself. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 58. Galen, Grace, and Cynthia waited in the small restaurant for a while, and soon a series of black cars slowly drove up on the horse road in the distance of the town, with a white eagle pattern on the side of the cars. There were 4 vehicles in the convoy, which slowly stopped at the edge of the driveway. A group of black-clad police officers descended from above, all wearing white-brimmed dome hats and black leather gloves. The leader was a man wearing a scarf. He was thin and tall, and a black windbreaker made him even taller. After the man whispered a few words to the approaching Tali Mercury and others, he cast his gaze towards Galen from a distance, glanced at it for a few times, then took it back, nodded, then got in the car again, and slowly moved toward Yin. Drive towards the Yarn Castle. Only then did Garen see that among the people who had just gotten off the car was a white eagle dressed in black. He was standing with a dark-skinned strong man, and he was walking towards the side with Tali Mercury. Their people are here, let's go over together, Garen whispered. Cynthia and Grace didn't reply, they just responded. The 3 of them walked towards Mercury and his group in the tower. The people from the police station are here, let's go with them, Tali Mercury said in a low voice with a brown pipe in his mouth. This is Black Panther, the life and death brother of White Eagle, he said, and introduced the dark-skinned man dressed like a soldier. Hello, Garen extended his hand to the man and smiled friendly. Hello, Black Panther grinned, showing his white teeth, your woman is very nice. Well, you may be mistaken, they are my assistants and bodyguards, Garen explained in shock. There was faint laughter from the 2 women behind him. This is Cynthia, this is Grace, Cynthia is my bodyguard captain, he introduced everyone one by one. After a few polite words were exchanged, Miss Sillen, Detective Tali's assistant, drove a 2-person, 4-row carriage to the road at some unknown time. He was smiling and waiting for everyone to get on the bus. Hurry up, otherwise you won't be able to catch up with Sheriff Rio in front of you, Miss Sillen said loudly. There are 3 people on the Galen side and 4 people on the detective side, which is just enough to seat them all. I don't know when a black carriage followed behind the carriage. It was filled with young people wearing black trench coats. They all wore black round hats and covered their faces with their heads lowered so that their faces could not be seen clearly. Is that one of yours? Garen looked to Cynthia on the right, who smiled and nodded. Detective Tali just glanced behind him and saw their origins from the clothes of those people. He's from Manhattan. Your company really cares about you. Of course, Mr. Kelly is an important person in the company, Cynthia answered quickly, and Grace frowned a little. Cynthia, aren't you a bodyguard? Don't you need to be alert to the surrounding situation? Grace snorted. Okay, stop making trouble and go on your way quietly. Garen shook his head and was speechless. Stop immediately if you see this happening. As a bodyguard, I will definitely do my duty, Cynthia smiled cutely, revealing 2 white little tiger teeth. Just wait and watch the show, just for a while. While the 3 people were sitting in the back row talking, the 4 people in the tower in front, Mercury and Bai Ying, frowned slightly. So, the people from Jinhuan have already arrived locally. Yes, According to the master, it should be the 10th golden ring. That woman is not ordinary powerful. She is equipped with Tiangang domineering Qigong that is almost to the point of resisting bullets. She moves like the wind, and her marksmanship is accurate. She can assassinate people. It's not ordinary. The average person is almost worse than an ant in her hands. That woman is obviously chasing the master this time. Master Lily should be fine, right? Black Panther asked worriedly. It's okay, don't worry. Originally, the teacher was planning to avoid it for a while. Unexpectedly, the crazy woman was seriously injured by a master who came out of nowhere. She is still recovering. She won't even think about doing anything for a few months. We are temporarily it's safe. Bai Ying laughed easily, but his face immediately darkened slightly. But we can't take it lightly. The 10th golden ring has two powerful generals, one is number 11 and the other is number 13. Both of them are not very strong. Any one of them is much stronger than me. If it hadn't been for the Black Panther's help last time, I probably wouldn't have been able to escape safely with my 2 children. As long as everyone is fine, it's fine. We have enough people this time. No matter how strong our martial arts are, we can't attack with so many guns. You don't have to worry too much about safety, the detective comforted. Fortunately, I let my wife take the 2 children. I'm going to Grandpa's house. I don't have any worries anymore. By the way, sir, is it a bit risky to bring Mr. Kelly with you this time? Our investigation this time is likely to involve an ancient cult. No one can tell what may happen inside. Silan asked in a low voice. After all, it was the entrance that he, Bai Ying and I discovered together. I will ask him again when the time comes. It is true that there may be unexpected dangers inside. The detective nodded. At this time, a cool breeze blew over, and the morning sun gradually rose and shone on the carriage. A small part fell on everyone's clothes, giving a faint warmth. The carriage drove smoothly onto a white stone bridge. The clear green water under the bridge on both sides continued to ripple. From time to time, red maple leaves fell on the water from the maple trees on the shore. Galen sat on the carriage and looked sideways. The grassy slopes along the surrounding roads were densely covered with woods. The 3 colors of red, yellow, and dark green were put together, making them extremely bright. On the shore beside the stone bridge, there are several doe deer and their fawns lowering their heads to lick the water. When these animals heard the sound of the carriage, they just raised their heads and glanced here, as if they were used to it, and then continued to lower their heads in the river. The first rays of the sun shine on the water, creating a golden glow. After passing this stone bridge, you will reach the sparsely populated area of Yinsha Castle. In the past, this bridge was the dividing line between the castle area and the town of Konu, Detective Tailai said. Everyone, be prepared. Golden Circle will never simply let go of the castle's secrets. They have lost so many men. Bai Ying frowned and suddenly spoke hesitantly. Sir, there is something I don't know whether I should say. Just tell me what's going on. Bai Ying hesitated. Actually, it's not a big deal. Last time I rescued 2 children, I met a man, a master of hard Qigong. He killed the leader of Jinhuan's Red Hand Fist alive. The most important thing is, I can see from him that he is probably practicing Demon Elephant Sect Kung Fu. Demon Elephant Sect, the detective frowned. Do they even have to be involved? Others may see it wrong, but you, Bai Ying, are definitely not wrong. You once narrowly escaped death from a master of the Demon Elephant section. Impression absolutely profound. I think it's possible that we met by chance, Black Panther whispered on the side, and after all, he doesn't have any ill intentions, and he even helped you kill your opponent. That's right, Bai Ying nodded. I just don't know why he would do this. Don't think too much, it's probably just a coincidence, Black Panther comforted. The carriage drove along, not very fast, and soon reached the mountain road that had to be walked. Everyone got out of the car and walked all the way, over the woods and hillsides, and finally arrived at the gate of Yinshaw Castle. Police officers were scattered throughout the castle. At the window of a room on the second floor, the tall and thin police chief was looking out. There was a policewoman standing on one side. The two seemed to be talking to each other. There was a policeman guarding the gate, and he took the initiative to come over after seeing the crowd. Chief Rio is waiting for several people inside. The scene has been completely sealed off, but no body was found, as the detective said. Oh, Tailai Mercury frowned. It seems that someone is one step ahead of us. Let's go and have a look. He took the lead towards the gate of the castle, followed by White Eagle, Black Panther, and Miss Sillon. Garin walked at the back, surrounded by a circle of men in black, all bodyguards brought by Cynthia. Cynthia took a black shotgun in her hand and was making false aim, checking the gun with clicks from time to time. The pistol is ready. Have you brought the howitzer? And where are the explosives I ordered? The subordinate quickly handed over a piece of white paper, on which the weapons and equipment he brought were written. Garin and Grace listened with their heads numb. Howitzer explosives. Cynthia, are you here to be a bodyguard or to fight? Grace whispered silently. There is no way. Who said we are not martial arts masters? And this is the age of guns. Martial arts masters? No matter how high you are, it's just a matter of getting a few more guns. Cynthia glanced at the white cloth in her hand nonchalantly. Paper, then nodded with satisfaction and pointed to a few smaller subordinates. Number 8 and number 11, take a few people to ambush on the surrounding hillsides. Pay attention to the accuracy of the shooting range. If you see an enemy coming out, kill them directly. The assembled sniper rifles are all in the car behind. Number 6, bring something and prepare it. Prepare to use special means. And on the 3rd, how are you preparing your explosive pack? It's enough to blow up the entire territory. The man named number 3 smiled nonchalantly. Everything is ready. Pay attention to where the dots are placed. We also need to hide them a little bit so as not to be discovered by people from the police station. Although we have a formal gun license, there are some troubles that we should avoid. I got it. Several men in black smiled and walked away carrying boxes of various sizes. Garin stood aside and felt a little helpless. If the 10th golden ring appears again, even with the same level of hard Qigong as mine, it can stop bullets. Explosives, howitzers, and the like probably won't be able to. He thought to himself that even if he encountered a dozen guns shooting wildly, there would be nothing he could do. Even if the distance was too close, he would not be able to resist the bullets. It would also be fatal if a vital part was hit, such as ears and eyes. Shaking his head, as a martial arts practitioner, he also felt a faint sense of loss at the moment of being eliminated by the times. Follow the tower detectives ahead. After entering the gate, I arrived at the small room on the first floor that was similar to a study. Tailai Mercury and others, together with the Rio police chief, were already gathered in front of the underground entrance, wondering what they were discussing. Seeing Garin come in, Tailai and Bai Ying nodded to him and continued their previous discussion. He was frowning and talking to a bearded man next to the sheriff. Garin stood aside and listened for a while. Both Tailai and the bearded man were discussing in an awkward dialect. They seemed to be asking questions and answering questions. Garin couldn't understand them at all. Only the police sergeant interjected a few words from time to time, and the expressions of the three of them didn't look very relaxed. Garin walked to Bai Ying and asked in a low voice. How is it going? Bai Ying shook his head. It's a little troublesome. The ancient mechanism expert said that the underground cave below is probably full of mechanisms. He thinks that the mechanisms below should be blown down with explosives first, and not people. He is not sure how to deal with all the mechanisms. End. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 59. And what? When we came here just now, this cave was opened. I clearly remember that it was restored to its original state when we left. Obviously someone also discovered this place later. Garen also frowned. It's indeed a bit of trouble. It's probably from Jinhuan. Suddenly he smelled a faint scent, like sandalwood, but much lighter. What smells so good? Huh? This smell. Detective Tailai suddenly stopped talking to the bearded man, his face changed slightly, as if he remembered something. Suddenly his expression changed and he suddenly shouted. Everyone, get out! Don't stay here! No one else could figure out what was going on, but out of trust in the famous detective, they immediately ran outside the castle. Garen did the same, but before he could run a few steps, he suddenly felt a blur in front of his eyes. There was a faint chuckle behind him. His scalp went numb, and he immediately remembered the time when he was pushed downstairs, and the same laughter behind him. Looking back suddenly, there was nothing behind me. Let's go, a vague voice came from beside him, and Garen felt a force pulling him, and he rushed straight towards the gate of the castle. He was suddenly startled, and then looked around at other places. No one else who was around him just now disappeared. He was the only one left in the entire castle. There seemed to be an invisible man running in front of him, pulling his hand. His hands moved forward as hard as he could. Boom! The door was slammed open. Garen was dizzy, suddenly lost his balance, and fell down on the grass. In the cold yet moist grass, a breath of fresh air penetrated his nostrils, instantly clearing his mind. The field of vision suddenly blurred, and a large group of people suddenly appeared on the surrounding lawn, including the police chief, experts, and a few policemen. As well as Mercury Sillon, White Eagle, Black Panther, and others in the tower. Cynthia and Grace were lying next to him, still looking dazed. What a risk! Detective Tailai. Mercury stood up and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He looked back at Yinsha Castle with lingering fear. I always thought that the previous aromas should be produced naturally, but now it seems that it must have been deliberately released by someone. This time, there were many of us and each other increased the concentration, so everyone could smell it carefully. What the hell is this? Sheriff Rio stood up from the grass, panting. The rest of the people also stood up one after another, looking at Tailai Mercury, who looked solemn. I just seemed to see the people around me disappear all of a sudden. What happened? Me too. I thought I heard someone laughing behind me just now. Don't worry. Let's hear what the detective says first. The police chief pressed his hands, and the surrounding area suddenly became much quieter. All eyes were focused on the detective. Garen was originally about to ask, but when he heard the other people's situation, he suddenly realized that it was similar to what he had experienced. He was shocked and his eyes focused on the detective in the tower. This is a strong hallucinogenic aroma. Tailai Mercury looked serious. I once saw a description in a book, but I didn't expect to see such an almost extinct thing in reality. He took a deep breath, looked at the others around him, and spoke word by word. The vine. This aroma is the hallucinatory poisonous gas naturally emitted by the legendary extinct vine after it matures. It can cause various hallucinations of loneliness and fear. The poisonous gas emitted by this vine is generally very light. Humans can't smell it at all, only some animals with a sensitive sense of smell can distinguish it. 2G Vine. Garen narrowed his eyes, recalling the first time he came to Yinsha Castle, when he was pushed down from the second floor and injured. It seems that someone must have used the fragrance of the tea branch vine to charm me first. Then when I walked to the window, he pushed me down the window forcefully. At that time, Bai Ying and Tailai must have been hallucinated by this fragrance, which caused the three of us to enter the room one after another, but we couldn't see each other at all. So, someone is deliberately preventing us from entering that passage, the police chief asked in a low voice. Tali Mercury nodded and began to discuss countermeasures with the police chief and organ science experts. On Garen's side, Cynthia and Grace were also completely awake. Cynthia was the one who pulled Garen out of the castle earlier. If I hadn't gone through resistance training such as hallucinogenic poisons first, I might not be able to pull you out this time. She smiled at Garen. Thank me, if it weren't for me you would definitely. There is a problem. Yes, thank you, Garen said speechlessly, but it was indeed the case. Cynthia played a huge role as soon as she arrived. If it weren't for him, Garen would have already been with the police in the castle who didn't have time to escape. Just like that, he fainted and fell to the ground. A group of people stood at the gate and did not dare to go in. They just looked at the two policemen lying inside through the gate. No one wanted to go in hastily and become like those two people. Look over there, a policeman suddenly shouted loudly. Point to the top of the third floor, which is the highest. Everyone followed his direction and saw a person in black standing in front of the window of a room on the third floor. She seemed to be a pale woman. She had a weird smile on her face, her eyes were dark green, and the corners of her mouth kept coming. Keep the saliva down. The moment everyone saw her clearly, the woman immediately disappeared into the shadows behind the window. Cover your mouth and nose with a wet hand towel. The water should be able to absorb this hallucinogenic aroma, Tali Mercury shouted. Everyone immediately began to take out the water bottles they had brought with them, wet their clothes, and then cover their mouths and noses. The sergeant was the first to rush in with a pistol, and ran to the two policemen who had fallen to the ground in the castle to check. Don't look any further, they're dead, the detective said solemnly as he walked in. An overdose of hallucinogens, especially such a high concentration, coupled with the heavy blow to the back of the head causing bleeding. The rest of the people immediately followed suit and answered the question. Catch that woman first. I'll go first, Bai Ying said coldly. Black Panther, protect Mr. and Miss Sillen. Leave it to me, Black Panther patted his chest. Watching Bai Ying rush upstairs in a few steps, he quickly disappeared around the corner. Cynthia also took out a white pistol and stood in front of Garen. The police chief stood up with a gloomy look on his face. Everyone, search for me. If you find that crazy woman, shoot her on the spot. Obviously, the death of his men made him feel angry. Yes, all the police officers had gathered around and pulled out their pistols, with a hint of anger and nervousness on their faces. Everyone was on high alert and began to patrol every corner of the castle. More than a dozen people were divided into several teams and patrolled everywhere. Galen led Cynthia and Grace to the second floor cautiously. Before he had taken a few steps, he heard two gunshots from above. Ah! A scream suddenly came. Tom! She ran to the second floor. Quick! Kill her! Damn it! This madman is too fast. I can't aim correctly. She ran towards the stairs. The three of Galen were just at the corner of the stairs when they saw a black figure jumping down from the stairs. It was as light as a piece of black cloth and completely weightless. Cynthia moved the fastest, and a white pistol appeared in her right hand. She aimed it at the black shadow and pulled the trigger directly. Bang 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 bang. 4 consecutive shots, only 1 second of encounter, all 4 bullets hit the black shadow. The black shadow let out a sharp laugh, paused, and rushed towards Cynthia again. It seemed that the shot just now had no effect on her at all, and her speed was even faster than before. A force suddenly appeared from her black shadow and grabbed Cynthia's neck, like a black tentacle. It was so fast that it was impossible to see what it was. Cynthia looked calm and held her gun motionless. Boom! This shot hit the black shadow's head just enough to tilt it back. Ah! The shadow let out a piercing scream, gave up attacking Cynthia, and fled directly downstairs. In a blink of an eye, there was no trace. Garen did not move behind. He did not want to expose his skills, and it was in front of so many people. Especially White Eagle. Although I wanted to take action, I still held back. "Are you okay?" he held Cynthia's shoulders. The latter's body shook, and she suddenly woke up from a state of high tension. She lowered her head and gasped for air. "It's amazing. That woman's speed. She was able to avoid my 4 shots in a row." There were beads of sweat on the tip of her nose. "But in the end, phew, I still got shot. It's a nightmare for a martial arts master to get close. No matter how good your marksmanship is, you can't defeat martial arts in close combat. Of course, if you distance yourself, it's the other way around." Garen nodded. "Let's go. Let's go down and take a look." Grace stood aside and couldn't say anything at all. Her shooting skills were also good, but she would never be able to react in time when encountering an opponent like this, and she would be caught and killed directly. Originally, she was not very fond of Cynthia's marksmanship, but her reaction immediately revealed her true strength. At this time, being pulled by Garen, the 3 of them quickly ran downstairs together. In the lobby downstairs, 5 or 6 police officers stood in the middle around the woman, all of them staring nervously at the center with their guns raised. The woman in black robe was lying on the ground, twitching from time to time, and there was a small blood hole on the left side of her head. The blood hole was very deep, and the brain had obviously been injured. Garen's group, the sheriff, and others gathered around, as did Taileye Quicksilver and Black Panther. Everyone looked at the woman in the middle. "She was shot in the head and is about to die." Cynthia turned the pistol in her hand and said calmly, "My bullets are specially made, and their penetrating power is absolutely powerful. They are designed to deal with martial arts masters like this." Sure enough, not long after, the woman suddenly twitched again and became completely motionless. The black cloak fell from his head, revealing a head full of white hair. "How old is this woman?" Garen was slightly surprised. "She must be at least 80 or 90 years old. I don't know how she has been living in this old castle." The detective took a puff on his pipe and said calmly, "There are very few people with special physiques who are not afraid of being poisoned by the poisonous smoke of the vine. However, if they live in this hallucinogenic poisonous smoke for a long time, they will lose their minds and behave like wild beasts. This guy must be like this. Special race. What now?" The sergeant looked at the detective. "First check the body to see if we can find anything, and then we enter the passage as planned," the detective said flatly, taking off his pipe. "Okay. Listen to you. When the time comes, Bai Ying, you protection expert, we will go down together, and the others will stay up to protect the entrance." Taileye Mercury began to make arrangements. "Sergeant, please bring 2 people to follow us down. We will leave 1 person at a certain distance to guard and respond, and tie the ropes we brought with us." "What about me?" Black Panther took a step forward and asked. "You stay up there to protect Scylla and the entrance." "I want to go down too." Garen took a step forward and said, "There will definitely be a lot of things in such a large underground passage. I can find the most valuable things and bring them up." This was also his original purpose. Besides, there are detectives and experts leading the way, so he doesn't have to worry too much about safety. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 60. Besides, his purpose was to find as many antiques of doom as possible. "Of all the people present, I am the only one who can truly distinguish the value of things," Garen said solemnly. "It's not necessary. Kelly, it's not too late to come down after we have checked the things below and there are no safety hazards," Taileye Mercury said in a low voice. Garen frowned. He had a hunch that if he didn't go down this time, he might not have the chance to go down. This premonition became stronger after seeing the death of the mysterious green-eyed woman. "I still think I should go down in person. I can probably protect myself by following behind." "Is it really possible?" Taileye Mercury turned to stare at him. "Kelly, you are an expert. Your value is not reflected in this kind of expedition. Professional matters should be left to more professional people. This is the right thing to do. Garen had no choice but to look at Grace and Cynthia beside him. Both women shook their heads slightly at him. Okay, okay. It's up to you. He knew that it was unlikely that he would be allowed to go down. I just shrugged and walked aside. Talai and the sheriff stood together, and after discussing the plan for a while, they began to prepare to enter the underground stairs. Garen stood at the door of the room, leaning against the door frame and looking at them, not knowing what to do for a moment. To be honest, when I encounter such a novel and mysterious place, I naturally want to go there myself and uncover the mystery bit by bit. It's a pity. Grace stood aside and whispered. If you can show your role and help them move together, then no one will refuse you to join. However, I still recommend that you do not go in to explore. If the cave is closed with a single entrance, it's very dangerous. As she spoke, she put down the wipes covering her mouth and nose. The smell had almost dissipated at this time, and most people put down the things covering their mouths and noses. By the way, that medal. Garen suddenly thought of the bronze cross medal, and no longer paid attention to the detectives, but turned and walked towards the hall. A few policemen stood sparsely in the hall, holding guns and being vigilant. These police officers were dressed in black, with a silver eagle badge on the left chest of their jacket-like clothes. When they saw Garen coming out, they didn't say anything. They just glanced at him casually and looked away. Galen recalled the location of the medal, and surprisingly found that it was exactly where the woman's body was. He frowned and walked to the woman's side, squatting down slowly. He gently grabbed the woman's body with his hands and turned it over. Snapped. The body turned over, revealing the bronze cross pressed on its back. Garen picked up the medal and looked around, but found nothing unusual. The potential content above is the same as last time. There is no change. It has increased a little, but it is just a little attribute. Better than nothing. Garen shook his head and stood up with the medal. What are you doing? Who asked you to turn over the corpse? Casually, a deep male voice came from the side. The police chief walked over and stood in front of Galen with a stern face. He was 1.9 meters tall, which was quite a bit taller than Galen. I just want to look for it to see if there are any clues, Garen said calmly. This is a matter for the police, and it is not something ordinary citizens like you can interfere with. Let's go and rest for a while. Don't delay our handling of the case. Sheriff Rio waved his hands solemnly and said impatiently. Then let me take a look at it, okay? I should be able to help. Garen was not angry and smiled. I told you, it's none of your business. This is not something that a private company can interfere with. You go and have a rest and wait for them to come out. The police chief became more and more impatient. And what's that in your hand? Give it to me. Garen took out the bronze cross and handed it over with a smile. Okay, you can go and have a rest. The sergeant took the medal, took a deep breath, turned around and whispered to a police officer walking beside him. Garen took Grace and Cynthia to stand aside to rest. It seems that we have nothing to do, Grace said calmly. If we had known that nothing would happen, we wouldn't have had to send so many people here. I can't say for sure. Cynthia smiled, looked down at the watch on her wrist, her dark brown eyes looked at the hillside outside the window, and a trace of doubt suddenly appeared on her face. What's wrong? Garen asked in a low voice. Someone is coming. My subordinates sent a signal. Go out and have a look. Cynthia's expression became slightly serious and she took the lead to walk out of the hall door. Just then a man in black walked towards the front door. Captain Cynthia, there are strangers approaching, and there are quite a few of them. Weapons are troublesome, the man whispered. Have you seen who it is? Can you stop him? Cynthia asked in a low voice. I don't know, but those people all have gold rings on their ears. The leader is a man in a white trench coat. People with golden rings. Garen reacted immediately and his face became solemn. Can you see their specific earring numbers? The man in black nodded. It seems that they should be part of an organization, and the leader is No 9. Garen's expression changed. They had just fought against number 10 and both sides were hurt, and now there is a golden ring number 9. If nothing else, the golden ring ranks the numbers purely based on strength, and number 9 is definitely much better than number 10. What weapons did they bring? Cynthia asked on the side. There are pistols, spears, daggers and swords. It's very weird. Let the two people on the slope be careful and don't get discovered. As long as we have snipers around, it shouldn't be a big problem. Cynthia nodded lightly. Now that we have people from the police cooperating, I don't believe that the other party dares to confront the police openly. Several people laughed, but Garen didn't think so. Yinsha Castle is likely to be of great significance to the Golden Ring. The arrival of Golden Ring number 10 is not enough, and now even number 9 is here. Now that Bayun's fighting skills have improved to the intermediate level, he is confident that he will not win so badly against number 10 again. At least if the opponent does not take it lightly, he can gain the upper hand without exchanging injuries for injuries. But the new number 9 didn't know the specific situation, but he was definitely better than number 10. As a result, Garen was a little worried and unsure. Even if the police stand together, but with the attitude of a golden ring. No. There is no signal on the slope. Cynthia glanced at the opposite slope, and suddenly her face turned cold. Zyoki, go and notify the other brothers to return to the team immediately. This time the opponent is likely to be more troublesome. Yes, the man in black trotted away. Are you sure? Garen asked in a deep voice. Trouble. Cynthia shook her head. The opponent is also familiar with long-distance sniping. We will protect your retreat at any time. We'll notify the police chief right away. Grace also became nervous. Garen nodded and immediately turned around and walked towards Sheriff Rio in the middle of the hall. This tall and thin man was discussing the condition of the body with his men. Sheriff, there's someone coming from outside. I'm afraid it's a troublesome enemy. Garen walked up and whispered. No one of mine noticed it. How did you know? Sheriff Rio frowned. My bodyguard discovered it accidentally. Garen carefully considered his words and spoke faster. The people from Jinhuan are coming with bad intentions. Detective, have they gone into the cave? We must send someone to call them up immediately. It's safer this way. It's not necessary. Our police department is fully mobilized this time. If someone does come, it won't be a problem to deal with. A little trouble, the police chief said casually, and he waved to a policeman not far away. The man trotted over. Chief, what's the matter? What's going on outside? Situation? What else could happen? Everything is normal, the policeman chuckled twice, speaking in a relaxed tone. Are you sure? The sergeant asked again. You're sure? If you don't believe me, you can see for yourself. Our sentry is still on the top of the slope. The policeman took out a telescope and handed it to the sergeant. The police chief took it, walked to the gate and looked towards the hillside in the distance. On the opposite hillside, a policeman in black was waving his hand to indicate that nothing was wrong. The bodyguard of our expert friend said, what if an enemy is coming? What now? The police chief laughed twice and handed the binoculars to Garen. Turned around and went back to the hall. Galen glanced twice. On the hillside inside the cylindrical mirror, the policeman on guard was yawning out of boredom. Cynthia, are you sure someone is coming? Sure, Cynthia replied in a low voice, the other party must be hiding. My two subordinates can see everything around them from their hiding spots. There has been no movement for 2 minutes now. Her face turned cold. The other party is definitely a master. The assassination concealment ability is extremely strong. After just a while of talking, 2 more of my people disappeared. What should we do now? Let all of us gather at a high place with wide terrain, such as the upper floors of Yinsha Castle. There shouldn't be a big problem in sticking to the castle. I'm already mobilizing my people, Cynthia said in a low voice. We must not disperse our personnel. When encountering such an opponent with extremely concealed assassinations, we must circumvent our shortcomings and suppress their advantages. Otherwise, we will be devoured to the point of leaving no bones. As soon as they finished speaking, the three of them heard the voice of Sheriff Rio coming from the hall. Everyone, disperse to the woods around the castle and be on alert. Report any movement immediately. Garen and Cynthia cursed at the same time. This idiot, especially Cynthia, cursed fiercely. Now these policemen with good marksmanship are our main strength, we cannot let them go out to die like this. She looked at Garen. Sir, you must ask the Rio sheriff to transfer the manpower back to the castle. Otherwise, we will be in trouble this time. I'll give it a try. Garen also knew that the situation was critical. The men Cynthia brought seemed to be of good quality, and their equipment was also very powerful. It is even easier for subordinates with this quality who can handle situations silently to deal with police officers who are not good at secret combat. He had just seriously injured the 10th golden ring himself, and his injuries were not completely healed. If there was another problem with the Rio sheriff. His face sank, and he turned around and walked towards the police chief again. Golden ring, the police chief laughed. Are you sure? Okay, 100% sure, Garen nodded fiercely. Sheriff, you must. That's just right, brothers, go out with me to kill the little guy from Jinhuan. I've long wanted to see what the arrogant Jinhuan is, and let you see how powerful I am, the top 50 sharpshooter in the Federation. Ha 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 ha. The sergeant didn't even hear the words, he drew his pistol and walked out of the hall laughing. He had obviously noticed some movement, and he had asked people to disperse the alert just in case. A group of police officers responded with a bang and followed the police chief out of the hall, leaving only one person guarding the underground entrance to the study. These idiots, Cynthia said angrily. Jinhuan may not be their opponent in a head-on fight, but they are masters who specialize in assassination. Sir, leave them alone, we must leave here immediately. Jinhuan's people are they are setting up an encirclement. Garen also had a headache as he watched the police chief and his entourage walk out of the castle and start patrolling around, not taking their opponents seriously at all. Chief Rio is so confident, he might give it a try, so don't rush. Bang 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 bang. Suddenly, a series of intensive gunshots came from outside, followed by the screams of the police being shot. Evacuate quickly. Which way? Protect the sheriff. Withdraw, withdraw, withdraw. Sheriff Rio's voice roared angrily. Amidst the continuous gunfire, he staggered and was protected by two police officers as he retreated into the castle gate. A police officer quickly closed the door halfway. Two more people ran in from outside. Fight back. Damn golden-ringed bastard. He just hides in the sewers. The Rio police chief loaded his pistol bullets one after another in anger. The 3 gallons followed and hid. The Black Panther in the study also heard the gunfire and ran out. Seeing the situation of the sheriff and others, he drew his gun and ran to the door. The window glass on the first floor of the castle was completely smashed, bullets continued to pour in from the gaps, and the scene was chaotic. The remaining 4 policemen followed the sergeant and hid by the door. From time to time, they reached out and fired a few blind shots. Garen hid behind a white angel sculpture, and 2 women hid beside him. Cynthia nodded at the 2 subordinates hiding opposite him with a gun, and was about to rush out. Boom! A bullet hit the edge of the sculpture, almost hitting her, and some white fragments suddenly spattered out.